So I want you to picture this. You're just sitting in your living room on a perfectly peaceful Florida evening.
Right, maybe enjoying the quiet.
Exactly. Maybe you're somewhere near Sutton Park, just relaxing. And then completely out of nowhere, you've got these 60-mile-per-hour gusts just howling outside.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And seconds later, you hear this sickening crack and then just a massive foundation-shaking thud.
That is the worst sound.
It really is. A 40-foot live oak just drops straight through your roof. And obviously panic sets in immediately. But as we're going to explore in today's deep dive, panic is absolutely not a plan.
No, definitely not. It's usually a recipe for making a bad situation significantly worse.
Right.
And that terrifying scenario is really the core of what we're talking about today. We are diving into a really fascinating source we got from tree service Palmetto LFL.
Yeah, it's a great source.
It really is. It opens up this incredibly high stakes and honestly surprisingly scientific world of emergency tree removal. It's a look into the brutal reality of the weather in places like Manatee County and, what it actually takes to recover when that weather just turns your own landscaping against you.
So our mission today is really to unpack this source and uncover why clearing a massive fallen tree off a structure is, well, it is absolutely not a weekend DIY project.
Oh, God, no. Please don't try it.
Right. I mean, this isn't about running to the hardware store, grabbing a chainsaw, and just hoping for the best. It's a highly tactical, surgical operation.
It has to be. And to understand why, we kind of have to look at the environmental context first.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Well, you have that beautiful Gulf Coast sunshine, right? But you also have hurricanes, tropical depressions, and these incredibly violent afternoon microbursts.
Just totally unpredictable weather.
Exactly. And the data we're seeing from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, it paints a very clear picture. Storm intensities and these erratic coastal weather patterns they're climbing rapidly.
And those climbing intensities mean that every old, rotting or, compromised tree sitting in a yard is essentially turning into a ticking time bomb.
Yes. Ticking time bombs is the perfect way to put it.
It fundamentally changes how you have to look at the environment surrounding a home.
It really does. The shifting weather patterns are creating this totally new baseline for what a typical yard has to endure.
So when we look at how professionals actually handle the aftermath, we first have to understand the physical forces at play, right? Because according to the Palmetto LFL source, it's brutal.
Brutal is the word. I mean, in a Category 2 storm, a single rotted trunk on, say, Sneed Island instantly becomes a 2-ton missile.
A 2-ton missile? That's terrifying.
The wind speeds just catch that compromised wood, and gravity does the rest.
But it's not just the dead or visibly rotting trees that are the problem, is it?
No, not at all. And I think that's what surprises most people. Even a perfectly healthy-looking pine can become a massive hazard when you factor in the local geography.
Right, because geography is sort of the hidden variable here.
Exactly. In Palmetto, you're dealing with this very specific sandy soil.
Right.
So when you introduce the relentless torrential rain of a tropical depression, that sandy soil becomes heavily saturated. It essentially loses all its binding strength.
It acts almost like a liquid at that point.
It really does.
Yeah.
So a perfectly healthy pine with a completely solid trunk and a nice green canopy, it will just completely uproot.
Wow.
Not because the tree itself was weak, but because the ground literally just gave way beneath it.
So the structural foundation of the tree just dissolves and the entire thing tips over.
Yep.
And let's say it lands on a house. Now you have a 10,000-pound oak resting on your roof trusses.
Right.
The sheer static weight of that wood is obviously a nightmare for the architecture of the home. But the most lethal danger to the homeowner or like a cleanup crew isn't actually that static weight.
No, it's not. I mean, the static weight crushes drywall and it fractures trusses, sure. But the lethal danger to a human being is actually the stored kinetic energy.
This part of the deep dive blew my mind. It's like a giant loaded mousetrap.
Yes. Great analogy.
You have these massive tree branches, and when the tree falls, those branches get pinned and bent back under thousands of pounds of pressure against the roof or even just against the ground.
They literally become coiled springs.
Right.
The tension held within the cellular structure of those bent branches is just immense. The International Society of Arboriculture, the ISA, they specifically highlight this stored energy as a primary hazard in storm cleanup.
Because the fibers on one side are stretching, right?
Exactly. The wood fibers on one side of the branch are stretched to their absolute limit, while the fibers on the other side are severely compressed.
So if someone, just takes a standard homeowner's chainsaw to a tension branch without understanding the mechanics of that pressure,
They are triggering the mousetrap.
they make one amateur cut, they release that tension, and the branch snaps back with enough force to kill a person instantly.
Instantly. The kinetic energy releases in a fraction of a second.
That is just terrifying.
And beyond the snapback, severing the wrong branch can alter the center of gravity of the entire massive trunk.
Oh, so the whole tree shifts.
Right. It can cause a 10,000-pound log to just roll unpredictably,
Yeah.
potentially crushing the operator or causing the already damaged roof underneath to completely cave in.
It's wild to think about a static piece of wood holding that kind of explosive, dynamic energy. I mean, one wrong touch sets off a chain reaction.
Exactly.
So how do you actually dismantle a giant, highly tensioned mousetrap without setting it off? And, without causing further damage to the house it's resting on?
Well, that requires what industry experts describe as a synchronized ballet of heavy machinery.
Ah, ballet. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, it really is a highly orchestrated event. It's governed by strict safety protocols to neutralize those physical forces before any cutting actually begins.
A ballet, but with massive steel and chainsaws.
Precisely.
Though I do have to push back a little here because I have to wonder about the collateral damage of this ballet.
What do you mean?
Well, if the solution involves bringing a 50-ton crane into a residential yard, isn't that massive overkill?
It sounds like it, yeah.
Right, because you picture these heavy machine treads just tearing up wet grass, crushing underground sprinkler heads, and completely ruining the driveway. It seems like you'd destroy the homeowner's property just trying to save the house.
And that is the exact reason top-tier professionals don't just drive heavy machinery onto a soggy lawn.
Okay, so what do?
The first step of the removal process doesn't even involve the tree. The ground crews arrive, they assess the drop zone, and they lay down these engineered heavy ground mats.
Oh, wow. So they are essentially building a temporary infrastructure first.
Exactly. They create a stable synthetic road. These mats are specifically designed to distribute the extreme weight of the crane across a much larger surface area.
It's about displacement.
Right. By spreading out that pounds per square inch footprint, they protect the saturated lawn from being chewed up. They shield the delicate underground irrigation PVC pipes from being crushed. And they provide a rock-solid platform for the crane to operate from safely.
Okay, so they neutralize the ground threat.
Yep.
Once the crane is actually in position on those mats, how do they handle the tree itself?
Then comes the rigging. Climbers actually scale the compromised tree, which, requires navigating around all those highly tensioned branches we just talked about.
Right, avoiding the mouse traps.
Exactly. They secure high-strength synthetic cables to the heaviest limbs.
Synthetic cables, not steel chains.
No, these synthetic lines are crucial because they're incredibly lightweight for the climbers to carry up into the canopy. But they possess a tensile strength that rivals steel, allowing them to hold thousands of pounds without snapping.
Okay, and this rigging happens before anyone even turns on a chainsaw.
The sequence is everything. It's the most critical part of the operation. The cables are attached, and then the crane operator actually takes the tension.
Wait, they pull on it first?
Yes. The crane literally lifts up against the weight of the branch, absorbing all that stored kinetic energy before the arborist makes the cut.
Oh, I see. So they are actively disarming the mousetrap.
Exactly.
They aren't letting gravity or the coiled tension dictate where the wood goes. The crane is holding all the cards.
They take absolute command of the physics on the site. Only when the crane has fully supported the weight and tension does the chainsaw actually sever the wood.
So there's no snapback.
None. As the cut finishes, there is no violent snapback, there is no rolling trunk. The crane just effortlessly lifts a 2,000-pound chunk of wood up and away from the gutters, suspending it safely in the air.
2,000 pounds. I mean, that is the weight of a small car just floating over someone's living room.
It's wild to watch. And then the crane operator gently lowers that massive piece down to the street.
And what happens then?
Once it's on the pavement, the ground crew takes over. They start feeding the wood into massive commercial wood chippers. The hazard is just neutralized, chunk by chunk, until the house is completely clear.
And according to the Tree Service Palmetto LFL source, the speed at which this ballet happens is staggering.
It has to be fast.
Yeah, these top-tier companies operate 24/7 during these storm events. When a tree has actually breached the envelope of a home, they boast response times of just 1 to 4 hours.
Because every single minute a house is exposed to the elements, the damage profile is changing.
Right.
The structure is compromised, and the weather is actively pouring inside.
But, when you're talking about deploying a 50-ton crane, a team of specialized climbers, and synthetic cable riggers at 3 in the morning, the financial reality of that is going to be
Oh,
brutal.
it's definitely not cheap.
Right, which is why people naturally hesitate. They look at the tree on their roof and think, well, maybe I can wait a few days. Maybe I can find a guy with a pickup truck and a ladder who will do it for a fraction of the cost.
That is the most common reaction, and it is a massive miscalculation.
Right, it seems like the most expensive mistake a homeowner can make.
Waiting always costs more.
It's really like ignoring a glowing check engine light on your dashboard because you don't want to pay $50 for an oil change.
Yeah, perfect analogy.
You might save a little money on Tuesday, but you just bought yourself a $5,000 complete engine rebuild on Friday.
Exactly. And with a punctured roof, that engine rebuild comes in the form of catastrophic water damage and toxic mold.
Oh, the mold.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, they issue severe warnings about this exact scenario.
What do the FEMA warnings say?
Their data shows that delayed mitigation leads to exponential structural damage. We're not talking about a linear progression of cost here. It multiplies by the hour.
I mean, the word exponential is absolutely terrifying when applied to home repair bills.
For sure. Consider the biology of what is happening inside the walls. You have gallons of rainwater pouring through punctured roofing materials, just soaking into the insulation and the drywall.
Ugh, what a mess.
And in a humid Florida environment, toxic black mold can set into that wet drywall within just 48 hours.
48 hours. So you really only have a 2-day window before a structural roofing problem mutates into a severe biological and environmental hazard inside your living space.
Yep. And that 48-hour window dictates the entire reality of your home insurance claim.
How so?
Well, your insurance company expects and legally requires you to mitigate further damage immediately after a strike.
Oh, I see. So if you just sit there, put out a few buckets, and let the rain continue to destroy the interior while you shop around for a cheap quote, the insurance company is going to penalize you.
Heavily. They will likely deny the secondary damage claims entirely, citing homeowner negligence.
Wow.
But hiring safe, professional emergency services immediately, that proves that you took responsible action to stabilize the hazard and protect the insured property.
There are some really interesting nuances to how that coverage actually works, though, based on the source material. It's not just a blanket policy for any tree that falls.
Right. Definitely not.
Most homeowners' policies will cover the emergency removal if the tree has fallen onto a covered structure, like the main roof or an attached garage.
But if the tree misses the house completely and just falls flat in the middle of the front yard, the situation changes entirely.
Even if it's huge.
Even if it's a massive 10,000-pound oak.
Yeah.
If it didn't damage a covered structure, you may have to pay completely out of pocket to have it removed.
Ouch.
Yeah, you always have to review the specific limits of your policy. But the moment it breaches the structure, it is an emergency mitigation issue that the insurance company is heavily invested in.
But dealing with insurance adjusters after a major storm is notoriously difficult.
That's a nightmare.
They are investigating claims, looking for any reason to minimize the payout or point to that homeowner negligence we talked about.
Exactly.
But bringing in a top-tier professional crew actually builds an airtight defense against that skepticism, doesn't it?
It really does. Professional outfits provide the meticulous, highly detailed documentation that insurance claims adjusters demand.
Like what kind of documentation?
They document the scene with photographs before the removal begins. They detail the exact specialized equipment required, justifying the need for the 50-ton crane and the ground mats, and they log the emergency measures taken to seal the roof afterward.
So they're essentially doing the adjuster's job for them.
Yep.
Just providing a complete, undeniable packet of proof that bypasses all the red tape, allowing the payout to be processed quickly.
Exactly. Rather than having the claim denied because, some fly-by-night contractor scribbled a random number on a napkin.
Right.
It's the difference between fighting your insurance company for months while your house grows mold and having the claim approved because the documentation is irrefutable.
Makes total sense. So we've covered the brutal physics of a fallen tree, the synchronized ballet of heavy machinery required to remove it, and the financial absolute necessity of moving within that 48-hour window.
Yeah, that's the reactive side.
Right, because emergency removal is purely reactive. It's the desperate scramble after the disaster has already struck. So let's shift gears and look at how a homeowner can beat the storm before it even forms in the Gulf.
This is such an important pivot. This is the shift from reactive disaster management to proactive botanical defense.
I love that term.
Yeah, because emergency removal is a necessary, expensive evil. But proactive care is basically structural engineering applied to nature.
Botanical defense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the actual mechanics of preparing a yard for hurricane force winds?
The most critical mechanical adjustment starts right in the canopy. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, FDACS, they emphasize that regular canopy thinning significantly reduces wind resistance.
Okay, wait, I have to ask.
Sure.
If a live oak has survived 100 hurricane seasons growing completely naturally, aren't we just weakening its structural integrity by hacking off its branches?
Just a fair question.
It just seems like we're stripping away the exact natural defenses that allow it to survive this long in the first place.
I get why people think that. It feels totally counterintuitive.
Right.
But we have to look at the aerodynamics of the tree.
Okay.
When a tree has a dense, unpruned, overgrown canopy, it acts exactly like a massive sail on a boat.
A sail.
Yeah. When those 60-mile-per-hour storm gales hit, the wind catches every single dense leaf and tangled branch.
Ah, I see. So the wind basically gets trapped.
Exactly.
And all of that immense kinetic force doesn't just dissipate, it transfers straight down the solid trunk and acts as a lever against the root system.
You nailed it. That sail effect leverages the entire weight of the tree against its own roots, ultimately pushing it over.
Wow.
But when a certified arborist performs professional canopy thinning, they aren't just hacking off limbs randomly. They strategically remove specific branches to open up the crown,
So they are altering the aerodynamics.
literally allowing those violent storm gales to blow harmlessly right through the gaps in the branches.
That's brilliant. You aren't fighting the wind at all. You're just reducing the drag and letting it pass through.
Ex
That fundamentally changes the pressure exerted on the trunk. But the effectiveness of that aerodynamic thinning has to depend heavily on the actual species of the tree, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can't just thin out a fundamentally weak tree and expect it to survive a hurricane.
No, you can't. The species dictates your baseline risk level. And there's extensive research from the University of Florida IFACE extension that focuses exactly on this, categorizing wind-resistant trees versus structural liabilities.
Okay, so based on that UFIFAS data, what are the winners and losers when, say, a Category 2 storm makes landfall?
Well, the reliable survivors are typically cabbage palms and live oaks.
Cabbage palms and live oaks.
Got it. Provided they are properly maintained and thinned, of course.
Yeah.
But they hold up incredibly well to high-velocity winds. They possess really dense, strong wood and deep, sprawling root structures that anchor them firmly, even when the soil gets totally saturated and wet.
So cabbage palms and live oaks are essentially your structural anchors.
Right.
What about the liabilities? What are the dangerous trees sitting in people's yards?
Water oaks and certain pine varieties fall heavily on the dangerous side of the spectrum.
Really? Pines?
Yeah. These trees are notorious for developing very shallow root systems.
Ah, the roots again.
Exactly. So when you combine a shallow root system with the flooded, liquefied soils we see during those torrential storms, the mechanical failure rate is just massive.
Because they don't have the deep anchors to fight that sail effect.
Right. So they just tip right over, roots and all.
Which brings us right back to the beginning of our deep dive, with that perfectly healthy-looking / pine uprooting simply because the ground gave way.
Full circle.
Understanding the biological architecture of what is planted, 20 feet from your bedroom window is a massive piece of the puzzle.
It really is.
Yeah.
Ignoring the specific vulnerabilities of your trees is basically playing a gamble with your home's infrastructure.
Yeah.
A quick inspection by a certified arborist in April can easily prevent a $30,000 roof replacement in September.
It really functions as a structural engineering audit for your yard. You are actively identifying the ticking time bombs, the rotting trunks, and the shallow roots before the timer even starts.
Exactly. Arborists look for dead or compromised limbs that should be pruned long before hurricane season arrives.
Right.
They assess the overall root health, they evaluate the soil saturation drainage on your specific property, and they determine the actual structural integrity of the canopy.
We have really mapped out a massive journey today.
We really have.
Yeah.
We've covered the entire life cycle of the hazard, right from the biological makeup of the tree all the way to the mechanical engineering required to remove it.
We started by looking at the hidden physics. The terrifying, lethal kinetic energy coiled up in those tension branches, those giant mousetraps just waiting to snap back.
Yeah, that's stuff most people never even think about.
Right. Then we explored the incredible synchronized ballet of the professionals. We saw how heavy ground mats protect the infrastructure, how 50-ton cranes neutralize gravity, and how synthetic rigging takes the tension before the chainsaw even makes a sound.
And the financial realities, I mean, they're impossible to ignore.
Oh, absolutely.
We looked at the FEMA warnings regarding exponential structural damage, that 48-hour biological clock of toxic black mold setting into wet drywall, and why bringing in verifiable, meticulous experts builds the documentation necessary to satisfy those skeptical insurance adjusters.
And finally, we broke down the mechanics of proactive botanical defense, understanding the aerodynamics of the sail effect, and really knowing the profound difference between the deep roots of a resilient live oak and the shallow, vulnerable roots of a water oak.
It really forces a complete perspective shift on residential landscaping, doesn't it?
It totally does. The next time you look out the window at the trees in your yard, you shouldn't just see beautiful scenery or, shade.
Right.
You should see complex, incredibly heavy structures. They require respect, they require an understanding of their physics, and they desperately require proactive maintenance to remain safe.
I couldn't agree more. And, looking ahead, the changing climate data raises a pretty fascinating question about the future of homeownership in these coastal areas.
Ooh, okay. Where do we go from here?
Well, we know from the NOAA data that storm intensities and erratic weather patterns on the coast are only climbing.
Right, the environmental baseline is getting way more aggressive.
Exactly. And we also know that shallow-rooted or unmaintained trees are becoming a massive liability, causing millions of dollars in property damage every single season.
The insurance payouts are just astronomical.
They really are. So the provocative thought to ponder is this. As those storms continue to worsen and the damage claims just keep skyrocketing, will home insurance companies eventually alter their policies to mandate strict, certified arborist inspections?
Oh, wow.
Will proactive canopy thinning and the removal of shallow-rooted species become a legally required chore just to keep your homeowner's policy active?
That is a heavy, but honestly a very realistic thought. I mean,
Mhm.
imagine getting a notice in the mail from your insurance provider stating you have 30 days to thin the canopy of your live oak, or your hurricane coverage is dropped.
It's totally possible.
Given the financial stakes and the brutal physics we've unpacked today, it doesn't seem far-fetched at all. It's definitely something to think about the next time you're sitting in your living room, enjoying a humid, peaceful evening, just hoping the wind doesn't start to howl. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.